Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Akil, and if you're interested in coaching and leadership on all levels, one-on-one, team aspects, as well as organizational culture, this episode is for you. Joining me today is Monica de Waal from Unique Sources, and she has taught me so much about personal leadership, me and my colleagues actually, so this was an honor and a real blast. Enjoy! One of the things I know about you, and you also mentioned to me, is that your passion really lies in making people happy again and eager to go back to work or to go to work or having to go to work with like a spring in your step.
Yeah.
Why has that always been a thing, or where did you find that passion?
Back to, waking up in the morning going, yeah. Well, I think it's I don't know where it originates from, but it has been there from the start. When I started my own business, I really thought, I want to make the fit between, the organization and people. So it really needs to fit together. And you see that when it doesn't fit, you see people frustrated and angry and sad. And when there's a good fit, then people are becoming the best of themselves, and they are contributing. And so also the psychological contract between the organization and the person works out really well. And that's, I find it sad when people are in organizations getting paid, a month, and they're unhappy. They're like, okay, do something that makes you happy, but also that is fitting for your competencies or your ambitions, or that's also don't you do something just because you need to do it. Yeah, there's enough of that.
What holds people back usually, what you've seen?
Hold back in what?
As in, you probably...
Holding back to make a step, another step?
Yeah, to make that step and to actually, let's say, better the situation to themselves, or to remove themselves from that situation and that organization.
It depends very much also on phases in life. And so younger people find it very difficult to make a step because they just made a couple of commitments. House, relationship, sometimes kids. So they're in this situation where, okay, hold on, if I move now, or if I do if I undertake another, if I make another choice, or I start an enterprise or whatever, that's uncertainty. So that might endanger all the other things that I have now in life. And with more experience, so 40, 50, there is, I've done it, I know what I can do, so why should I make that change? It's not about financial insecurity or things like that, or endangering things, but it's more like, okay, if I do this, do I really want it? And they find it more difficult than to find out what they are good at or what their real ambitions are. And sometimes they really go back to, with a 40 plus or so, then I go back with them to the discussions. What were your ambitions when you were 8 years old or 10 years? Because that's very much related to the original dream.
That deep?
That deep.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect that, actually.
Well, what did you want to become when you were 8?
I talked about this recently, actually, because it was one of my icebreakers in my team. I said I wanted to be a chef as well as a fireman.
Okay.
And I have no clue why that was, but I wanted to do both.
Well, there's being in the lead and control there. Yeah,
it could be.
Yeah. Also creative. Creativity is in being a chef.
Yeah.
And the control is and also, helping. Could be a layer in it. So there's values in those first dreams and ambitions. So this is what I would like. Yeah. And then I think I always said, when I was in first grade, I wanted to be a teacher of first grade, and second grade, I wanted to be a teacher of the second grade. And then at a certain point, it changed into, I want to work with very difficult children that have, special learning codes, or had or have what we call now neurodivergent. So and I work with neurodivergent people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're sort of kids still.
That makes sense. There's an essence in there.
Yeah.
I mean, when you would ask me still now or even back then, I don't really know what I first of all, I'm an expert in. Like, people label you an expert, but I don't really feel like an expert. Maybe that's a little bit of an imposter. Or what my vision is, or really where I want to move towards.
Yeah.
That's still like I have a lot of options, and I am very curious innately as a person.
Yeah.
And I'm having a lot of fun exploring these options, but I still don't
Yeah.
know which one is like the end goal.
Yeah.
And also the word of an end station or an end goal is like a huge hurdle.
Yeah. And don't go to the end thing, because I think people can become many different things in their lives. So there's not one career or one thing that you're becoming. People will never say, I want to become only a dad or a mum or no kids at all. Because that's one of the things that will happen in life. It's one of the roles, but you will not specify that specifically as a dream. I know many people do that.
Yeah.
So, but it's one of the things that will happen in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking back to, because you and I have had many one-on-one conversations, and I know many people that you also have conversations with. And they told me that there's something in you and the way you do one-on-one coaching where you just peel the onion and you get to the essence in the right way.
Thank you.
Where they tell a story and they say, and you say, no, let's go back and zoom in on specifically this bit.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden people realize that I was talking about something and I didn't know I wanted to talk about this, but then all of a sudden we're talking about this, and I'm happy we did.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because that for me is extraordinary.
How do I do that? Maybe that's one of the things that I was gifted with, or that I have a talent in. Because I think I had that already very early in life.
Yeah.
I remember going back. One of the things my mother said to me, one of the moves that we made, and the movers were in front of the house, and they started talking to me about their lives. And I was, I think, 12 or something, 13 maybe. And she said, "What did you say to them?" I said, "Nothing. I just asked questions." So it's, I don't know. It's a sort of curiosity that is there. I want to peel the onion, or maybe make people cry. Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
No, it's really to get to a deeper layer and do deep dive, because all the superficial stuff. Oh, and it might be related also to third culture kids. It's mentioned as a characteristic of third culture kids, kids that grew up as a result of the work of the parents somewhere abroad between 0 and 18. Those kids go. You don't have time to fool around and have all the other things to discuss. You go straight to, okay, we meet each other now, so now we will talk about it.
Yeah.
So, and about this, and this is important, and that's important. So that's part of that might have influenced it.
Yeah. I see myself as someone that would really enjoy having those conversations.
Yeah.
But for me, there's a big scare in that. Like for me, it's just curiosity, and that's mainly the driver. I don't have the education to then guide people or make people realize what they should realize to take control of either their situation
Is the hurdle
or life.
the competence?
I don't know if it's the competence, but it is still like it's a person, like it's a one-on-one thing. What if my guidance or my advice or my perspectives are wrong or are incorrect in that way? I think that's mainly the thing that withholds me from doing those.
Somebody is talking into your
and it's me.
ear.
I know that.
Yeah, talking and saying, no, don't.
Yeah.
Well, try, yeah, go
Is
go
that
ahead,
how you
try.
started as well? Yeah.
You go try, because people will appreciate that you ask about them, that you're curious about them. So there's not a lot of wrong steps that you can take, and you're not immediately asked for guidance. You don't have to provide guidance, but you can say, "Oh, let's explore this together." So that's what you basically do.
Yeah. Is that like the essence of one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, you explore together, and not only in one-on-one coaching, but also organizational development. At a certain point, you recognize patterns, but I'm sure you have that in your work as well.
Yeah.
You recognize patterns. You recognize patterns in teamwork, but you recognize patterns in the coding as well. That you go like, hold on, this should, and then you have you look at it and you see that it's wrong, or that something should be corrected or something.
We call it a smell in code.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
And it's a smell. Okay, so
something's off.
Yeah, something's off. Yeah. And that's in your in dealing with people, same thing. Something's off, and you go like, there is either a tone or how people look, or how they phrase it, or there's indications of that.
Mhm.
Very micro sometimes.
Something you mentioned triggered me, and I had a conversation with Rustam actually. It was the previous episode,
Mhm.
and we talked about, you mentioned that friction between a person and an organization.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you've seen where it affects teams, because Rustam shared a story where it really affected the team he was in, when one person had like more on a personal level things going on,
Yeah.
and then the team collaboration just really took a downfall because of that.
Yeah.
Is that like common in what you've seen?
Well, that is part of, and you know this. Have we shared that I think in systems, so that systems are connected. So teams are also connected. It's open social systems. So if there's something happening in that system, it will affect the balance. Systems look for homeostasis, always for balance in the system. So if you look at that and you think, one team member is experiencing something either from the organization or from the private side, it will create unbalance. So that's something that is it's a natural process, and then all the elements are also connected. So you need to look at and the connections and what is happening. So it's always important to know how people feel, how they're taking care of their bodies and their vitality, their mental state. That's all connected.
Yeah. And I know that, let's say, from theory, and in practice, I've been in teams where there's just, I feel like no time for that, because we're working towards a goal and deadlines are there, and like the whole people aspect sometimes within teams just gets, pushed as far back as you can.
Yeah.
And then I feel that I don't really know my colleagues, and there are conversations where I'm like, okay, can I really trust them, or do I need to do it myself? Like that level of trust is just not there then. And I do notice the consequences, but time is like the most crucial factor there.
Yeah. And then when things go sour in teams like that, then, there's this model of Lencioni. That says basic layer is first trust. So that's the most important thing. And you let people score on trust. What is the trust now? And there's a couple of indications for that, how people share things. But it's also the performance and the results and the goal orientation is something that comes later, because you cannot do that when there is no trust. So even in stages of teams, performing comes after the forming, storming, norming, and then there's performing. People say, "Oh, but now there's a result, and we go."
Yeah,
impossible. There is a couple of who are you, and are we? Is this going to be a good team? And all the value systems that you carry from with very, very different cultural backgrounds, even. That's what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
So,
are there methods or practices that you've used to build trust, let's say, on a faster basis? Because most of the teams I go in, it kind of trickles, and trust comes with time.
Yeah.
And the more time we have, the more we have different scenarios, different conversations. And because of that, we grow towards each other and we trust each other.
Yeah.
But there's no time and attention to build trust, let's say, in a faster way in the teams I've been in.
No, there is. It's like in the Leading the Way program, there is this, on purpose, there is 2 things on the first day. That is business principles, which you discuss as a group on what is really important and how do you translate that into behavior. And the other thing is the Where I'm From poem from Georgia Ella Lyon.
Yeah.
She developed that as a way of opening up in a rather quick way, in a different way, to get to know each other. And yes, it can go. It can become emotional, and people, decide what they want to share and how they want to share it. They decide themselves, but it's a way to open up, and that builds trust. So opening up, and that's, you heard me say that as well. And this behavior breeds behavior. If I start sharing things from my life with others, behavior breeds behavior. So it will invite the other also to share something from their personal life. And I'm not saying that, because I mentioned my mother, you mentioned your mother, but it could be linked in the earlier conversation, because it resonates and you go like, oh, that's right. Yay.
Yeah.
So that's part of what happens.
Yeah, I'll put that, because I think we have a PDF that you sent. I'll put that in the show notes. And I think I will always remember that session. And if I come to an organization where, let's say I feel like, oh, there's a lot of friction or we don't really know each other, that is definitely one of the methods I'll pull out of my hat to see if we can build trust.
And then I have a fair warning for that because it can get really emotional.
Yeah.
And you have to have a very good moderator or facilitator to facilitate that session. Someone who knows about what happens when people go into traumatic experience again, or when things happen that really shake up the group, that you know how to hold this in a safe space.
Yeah.
Because that's part of what can happen is, and if you do that, just like, oh well, we'll do where I'm from, and and people start sharing their shitty life, shitty and first part of their life when they grew up. Then it's difficult.
Yeah.
So you really have to do that. What I said, be open and transparent, but handle with care. That's respect needs to be and you need to be very respectful in these things.
Have you been in a situation, without obviously naming the details, but where it went in a direction you didn't expect? Because of that, let's say, facilitation that wasn't there as much as it should be?
Well, the thing is, I'm the facilitator, so then when I'm present, that usually doesn't happen. But I have experiences where people said, okay, I'm not ready to share it at this moment.
Okay.
And then it's for me also, it's a lesson, and stop, because it's not an obligation to share, it's an invitation. So if people say no, and I not now, that's good. Then I know also that's an indication for more trauma, or that people have something to say, but not that particular moment. So yeah.
On the level of one-on-one conversations, let's say I'm a coach, I would know where to start because I talk to people on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah.
Also, when I'm aligning teams, I know which teams I have to start with or which teams I would go to. But when it comes to helping an organization, I wouldn't have a clue where to start because there's so many people there, and I can start with the bottom and have my ear to the ground, let's say, and see what's going on. Or I can start more high over and see what the challenges are and see how they trickle down. When you are, let's say, tasked to help organizations, when a certain change happens or when a new leadership team is there, how do you start typically?
First, there's the invitation to be in. So it's not that I I look at organizations and say, oh, they have a new CEO or there's a new COO coming, or so. Now I need to step in. Some people do that. Some consultants, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm already connected somehow to the organization or people in the organization, and they ask me in, and they say, we would like to work with you, or could you explore with us? As we discussed a little bit before, is what you see is many organizations they will look or become more like the personality of the person who is leading it. And so narcissistic leadership will lead to an organization that has within their culture elements that you think that's a little bit toxic or that's not helping, or people that are really empathetic, the alpha males that have a lot of empathy, as Frans de Waal researched in his TED Talk. They create empathy within their organizations, and they have their ear to the ground themselves. So then talking about change is a different thing. And so like I'm working now with a chemical factory, they're on a site with their leadership team, and they have had a rough period with a leadership that was not effective, that was intimidating, and all leadership left, and there's new leadership in, and now one of the older, experienced one that was there before stepped back in on the position again, and they are reforming the whole organization and saying, okay, now we need to have our strategy back into order. We need to have our structure back into order, but also our staff. As many organizations, they're struggling with staff to find people. So who do we want, and how do we commit them to our organizational values?
Yeah.
So that's, and then we take these things step by step. And of course, people in their own positions and with their own responsibilities.
Yeah. I understand that leadership, let's say, and behavior trickles down. And if you have leadership with certain amounts of behavior or certain types of behavior, it trickles down as well. But then theoretically, the bigger the organization, would it actually trickle down all the way to the ground when you're talking about bigger organizations? Or?
Yeah, well, you see it then that it's very, it's usually departmentalized. So you see the islands that look like they're like the kingdoms, and they have their own cultures, or they have their own ways that look more like their leadership, which is regional, or which is so. It's for the global organizations. It is a challenge to really have the values, and it's also there's a contradiction there, because the organizational. I researched that with one of the studies that I did with the MBA. That what is more important? What is in the end decisive? Organizational culture or national culture?
Okay.
National cultures are decisive. So that's at least what I found with American headquarters and then European subsidiaries. So the American headquarters had certain values, common bond, codes. We are honest with each other, for example. And then taking that to the Netherlands or France or Germany, in this case, we found that in the Netherlands they say, we're honest with each other. Are you serious? Are we going to write? Do I need to sign this? Is it written down? I'm not going to say, I'm not going to do that. So they refused, because they said, honesty is something that you are or you're not. It's not something that you write on a piece of paper and that you hang on a wall. So in this case, U.S. culture said, but you hang it on your wall, and this is what we live.
Yeah.
Same thing with, for example, it made me laugh with the French, because no alcohol, or being the local culture is allowing to talk with food and drinks, including alcohol, during working time. But then the IBM office at that time had 2 restaurants in France. One was at one side of the street and one was the other side of the street. This was local, French, alcohol, and this was global. This was no alcohol. So local culture really decides a lot of what happens with the organizational culture globally. And if you know this, then you can actually tweak that and say, okay, this happens here. We need this. We need this. But you cannot say, the Indians and the Polish and the Dutch and all are the same and they should work the same way.
Yeah,
doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. No. But do you think that's a good thing, that localized culture, let's say, trumps organizational culture?
Well, I think it's a fact. It's more, it's good or bad. It happens, so you have to deal with it
in that way.
Yeah. If we don't have enough. If it's a fact in the Netherlands that if we don't take care of the water management, then we will be flooded in 30 years. That's a fact. So that's take care of it. It's not good or bad, but you have to do something about it.
Can you also have that, let's say, more so localized culture within a same region? Then, let's say within NL, if we have an organization that has different branches in provinces. Do you there then also see localized cultures trumping what is happening on organizational level? But then where do you draw the line? Or do you even need to draw a line?
Well, you will connect on functional culture.
Okay.
Functional culture is also so it connects. If you have IT people, they will say, okay, IT, and there is a certain language that we speak. You all go to the Gartner conference or whatever, and there's a certain we understand these things. It's part of our
it's
DNA,
like a craft.
It's a part of our skills, our knowledge, etc. So there's a language we understand, and that helps. So there's always a connection. If you are part of a certain organization, you say, within our organization we do things a certain way. And that might be locally different, but it's still connecting. So it's an internal paradox a bit.
Interesting. Also, when I talk about then, let's say, diverse organizations or diverse cultures within a certain country, NL, even within this organization, we want more diversity. Because diversity breeds innovation and more creative ideas, more creative outcomes, let's say. But then do people bring that localized culture like from a personal value standpoint? I do think they bring that with them. So then you have this not homogenous culture, but the opposite that starts to happen on a localized basis.
Yeah. So it's an interesting perspective. When people say, "Oh, diversity," you need to be able to see diversity on the outside, skin color or gender or or age. I'm not sure because I can have a group of 10 white men, and they can have very different backgrounds. They can have very different values. They can have very different ways of thinking. So they will be heterogeneous in other respects, in other aspects. I would encourage them, however, to make sure that they include other perspectives also in gender and age and the cultural backgrounds, because that will make the diversity bigger. That will enlarge, and that's part of research as well. Diverse teams, they perform better. Is one condition under good leadership. So
that's the asterisk.
Yeah. That's because if that's not there and people do not understand what is actually happening in a diverse team, then you can have a lovely diverse team and it will not perform.
Interesting. I've also heard that like the way you do hiring or, for example, there's a referral bonus. If that's in place, you get more homogeneous culture because people refer people that are like them. Yeah. Because probably also they think decision-making happens faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a way of, and I have been in homogeneous teams, decision-making can go faster because we understand each other, we talk the same language. But then, I have felt that at some point we just miss things.
You miss out on opportunities that somebody else would have brought to your attention, but they're not there.
Exactly.
So, then what? Yeah.
Going back to then culture, and especially in that heterogeneous environment, can you then still align on, let's say, functional values when it comes to your culture, what you stand for, what the factors are that connect us within an organization?
Yeah. That's that goes to the business principles part. So and that can be very practical as well. So it can be about times that you work. It can be about the way of working, how you work, but also cleaning up the kitchen or what. That's here in the building. It's not about the kitchen at home, but it's making sure that your workplaces are in a certain order. Or that's also very. And that can be very visual as a culture. You have also very visual culture within CBIA with a certain. I received last week the first edition of the new notebook, right?
Yeah.
And there's a chimpanzee on the front, and that's part of your with the glasses and earphones. And I thought that's part of your marketing, and that's the visual marketing. That's part of your But and there might be CBians that say, we don't like this, again. But it's recognized as this is part of what we do or how we do things. This is the color. This is etc.
What I'm interested most in is that how do you get alignment? Because you also mentioned, let's say from the US example, if we say we need to be honest with each other, that doesn't need to be written more so in a Dutch culture in that way. When you have a heterogeneous culture, how do you find alignment in the values that bind us?
It was funny in this case, with taking me back to that research, is that the Dutch were allowed then in the end in two of the American organizations that had the same code of conduct line to actually sign it for we have seen it.
Okay.
So not I agree because that's the original one, but I have seen this, and they were also allowed to put it in their drawer.
Okay.
Not to show it, and do the thing to make it more explicit. So that was funny to see how it was solved in a way to say, okay, fine, we understand it's different, and but we would like to know that you have seen it. In the German subsidiary, for example, the alignment was as the manager of 100 people would sign for all of his or her people.
Okay.
That they have seen it because I have seen it. They have seen it. That was interesting too.
Wow. Yeah.
I thought, and if somebody then is not honest or is not working according to the code of conduct, then you will leave as well, or what happens? Yeah? So that was fascinating.
Me and my
Anyway,
100 people.
Yeah, me and all
Yeah,
100 will go.
exactly.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, yeah, that was interesting.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand how they resolved it. But if there were, let's say in the Dutch culture, if there was also a lot of people that migrated from America, would things have gone the same way? Because those are personal values. Maybe
yeah,
they would have wanted
yeah.
that up the wall as well.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
struggling with
And then-
in
yeah.
that we have more diverse teams with
Yeah.
more different personal values
Well, you
as
get
well.
you get more discussion about it because why are you not doing this? Huh? So yeah, people will talk to each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
I worked with another IT company in the Netherlands, and they had a big struggle with the some of the international workers that were there because the Dutch managers would say, "Oh, they don't speak up." They, so there's already us and them.
Yeah.
And there is this, they don't speak up, which is why would anyone needs to speak up? Because that's a Dutch value. Eh? Tell me what you think. We ask our kids, 3 years old, what do you think? Other cultures find that ridiculous. Say, you're never going to ask a 3-year-old what do you think or she thinks. That's ridiculous. Because there's still, you need to tell kids what they need to think. So that's a different, yeah. And so in this case, there was this had diversity, but it showed the values and the bias that was there, and that was creating friction, because people and the managers would expect, oh well, you will tell me what you think. Well, maybe Chinese culture, Indian culture, no, you will not. So.
But did they realize that and eventually change to accommodate for that?
Some of them, and some of them say, no, they're here.
Okay.
So you
They have to
learn-
act like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in Rome, so act like, well, that might not be the skill or the competence, or people are not just, their cultural layer really blocks them from doing that.
Yeah.
And for the Dutch, there is also a cultural layer that can block them. So it's not an easy fix there.
No, exactly. And then especially when you talk about, let's say, going to work and being happy, like looking forward to that day.
Yeah.
If you have a team where that is the culture and you just don't fit in, I can really see where that's challenging. And then the question for me is like, does the person need to change? Does the team need to change? It's probably somewhere in the middle there.
If the fit is, it's really a misfit.
Yeah.
And I see people being hugely unhappy because there's this whole team around me that doesn't understand me. And please find another spot. There's many other places, and people, you can be happy. Oh, and on the other hand, there is this option that you tell people, well, maybe you're just what's the English expression? The luis in de pels. You're
like the odd one out. Is that what you mean?
Odd one out, but the luis in de pels is really also the person who will trigger the other behavior and who will make a change because they are behaving differently.
Like a bad apple.
No, it's not the bad apple. It's actually the good apple that says, or the good pear. Within the basket of apples, and saying, but there's this is really good.
Yeah.
I'm tasteful and I'm happy and I look good. I look different, but I look good. So there's another thing there, huh?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering then.
We need more diversity. We need more pears, and we need plums and whatever.
Yeah. For me, it triggered a thought in that I don't think there's a right and a wrong, right? If you find yourself in an environment and it's just different and it's not a good fit, does that mean then the environment is right or wrong? It's not that black and white, I feel like.
No, it's not black
because
and
that's
white.
what that works for them probably. It works for the majority of people there. And then it might not be a right fit.
Although there are environments that, as I said, with narcissistic leadership or with the really toxic behavior, where I sometimes also come in teams that have conflict, where it has been there for years and years, that you think, this has been going on, and people are not active bystanders and saying something about the behavior, but allowing other people to make wrong jokes or show racism or sexism, and then think, yeah, but that was a joke. No. Yeah, so and then it's really toxic, and then you have to really, dig deeper to make sure that this, all this super high intensity is out.
Yeah. What did you do then? Because you said you have come across situations like that, and I feel like that's an uphill battle to start with, let's say.
Yes,
and it can be exciting to try and fix that. But I mean, if no one wants to listen to that, it might not be fixable either.
It's the thing is, people really want, because they have felt it already for years, that something is wrong.
Yeah.
And so a conflict that I mention often, totally in the beginning of my career, people had been in a conflict for more than 10 years. Some people had been writing diaries about that for all these, writing all this horrible stuff down.
Wow.
They said, do you want to read the diaries? I said, no. And please no. But how is it possible that you were not able to even find each other to talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this first base of basic rules: listen to each other, and summarize what the other person has said. Is this what this other person meant? And try to stay away from the impact and look at the intentions. That's a different thing. Mm-hmm. And some things can be helped and sorted out, and some things not. Then you just have to say, this is not going to work.
Yeah. When we're talking about specifically that situation where you tried and probably tried and eventually realized this is just not going to work, what did that do to you? Because I feel like, looking at myself, I would try, and it's really hard to give up. Like that's the person I am.
Yeah.
But at some point, like if everything goes against also your personal values, it's also just not a good fit.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I have learned over the years is really to say it's the problem of the client. It's not my problem. So if some of them really want to keep that problem and keep it alive and feed it even, then that's their problem. And then I will step back and say, I don't think you really want to work on this. So it's up to you, and it's your thing. So go ahead. I don't know if you want to run into a wall. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And it's you will probably hit your head. That's what I think. But you might not. I don't know.
That sounds like a mindset that, I have adopted and I'm trying to adopt, because a lot of organizations come with a problem and all of a sudden make you feel like it's your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably, sometimes, it's really difficult to say, oh, no. This is not my, monkeys on my shoulder. No. It's yours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially if you're, let's say, maybe earlier in career and you want to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You will do a lot of stuff because of that.
It's mine thing.
Yeah,
it's my responsibility, and I'll take care of it. Yeah.
To a point where your plate is just full of work.
But as a consultant, also organizational development or one-on-one coaching, I'm not you. Mm-hmm. I am not that organization. I am here, and I can look at it. I have a different perspective. I can offer that, and we can talk. We can walk the same route, but at the end, you have to do your actions, and I have to do mine. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, I would be really like, what? Even worry about this one person in the group that was really unhappy after this training or whatever. I think, like, what could I have done differently? And I think maybe there was something else that had nothing to do with the training or nothing to do with the whole project. But this is a person who is unhappy with life. I don't know. So
yeah, I was thinking of, especially with organizational change, a lot of the things that you do will take, let's say, a long time before they see the fruits of that labor specifically.
Yeah.
Are you there for that full duration of the time to see the fruits of your labor? Because I also feel like you put the right things in place and then that's the time to leave as well. Yeah. Is that usually how it goes?
Yeah, well, not usually. So I had a couple of clients that I worked with for 6 to 8 years, and we went together a long way, and sometimes a couple of years, and then they ask me back. They say, "Well, you need to see what has happened since." So that's good.
That's fun,
and that's fun. That's fun. Or sometimes they go, "Oh, we need you again, sir. So it's going sour." So that's also good. But I'm also a fan of allowing people to do it themselves. I'm not the genius from outside. I will solve everything. Yes, I can offer a different perspective. I can ask the nasty questions that sometimes inside people cannot ask, or show the curiosity for other things. But sometimes it's just you can do this, and then unveiling the potential that people have already within their organization, and that's fun too, because then people discover like, hey, we can do this. Good.
Yeah,
Bye.
I can see that. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Have you also had, let's say, an ask where people asked for your help or asked for your guidance, and then you decided, well, this is not where I can help, or this is not what I can help with, or it's just not a good fit?
Well, financial management. That's
the one.
I draw the line. I go,
Okay.
no, don't let me look at budgets and
Statistics again.
No. It's not my forte. Yeah, it's. I've learned it at the MBAs, and yes, if I force myself into, but it costs me a lot of energy. I go like, no, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really not about the numbers, but I'm and about the results that will come. It will show in the numbers, but that's a different thing. It's about the people and making them tick and making them to get up and go to work and think like, hey, good, it's another day. We can do it again.
Yeah.
That's
One thing I had also recently, I did a Q&A episode, and one of the questions was more so about time management. And especially when I'm talking to you and you like having one-on-one conversations, team dynamics, as well as organizational culture, you can do all of that and probably more. But how do you manage your time? Are you very, very well aware of what's on your plate and if something new fits in, or how do you do that? Is that
it's an interesting one? Yeah, well, it's interesting because I tend to say yes to almost everything. And so like, oh yeah, nice, good. And I'm getting a lot better with double bookings or things like that. That could happen. But it happened more in the past that people were, oh, there's a group waiting here, and oh shoot, that I did that. But I'm really from and. So, and I think my mind also, I have a hyperactive mind, so it allows me to go in many different directions. So that's really good. I think that's really good. And it also allows me to listen to more of what is needed. So, and sometimes I just decide to say, well, no, not now. It's funny because recently I was asked for half-day sessions, online sessions, and a lot of teams and etc. And I thought, the pro of that, it allows me to have my one-on-one coachings or development time on the other half of the day. It will block me, of course, from having a 2-day training or 2-day team building or whatever leadership programs, 3-day leadership programs somewhere else. So that's a pro and con.
Yeah.
And then I decide usually on what is in it for the client. Can I really contribute? And do they need me for that? Or can they work with somebody else? That's basically the decisive factor. Or with whom I can work. In this case, I will probably work with this company because I like them. They're young. They have been... they have innovative procedures in their working, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
Integrate AI and that stuff. So good.
Do you refer clients or people also to other people often?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have with my company. I have like 25 people that are in my team.
Yeah.
Unique Sources professionals, and they are all over. So, and when something happens, I can say, well, Patricia in Miami or Kelly in Tulsa. So there's a couple of Americans, but Michael is in Germany. Henning is in Amsterdam. So there is, different people that are all over that I can say, oh, well, you work with me. Claire works with China. So that good.
I like that a lot. Yeah. That's nice. So, circling back to kind of the topic we sliced open and contributing to people's happiness in going to work. I don't know. Maybe I should rephrase that. like there's always several avenues to go about that. And especially in a one-on-one dynamic, finding that out, we already touched on that. That's a difficult one. Having that conversation and truly listening and then finding out what the root cause is, that's one way. Have you find any commonalities in what usually is causing that conflict or friction in people kind of not feeling at place or at ease or finding happiness at work?
Is there a common denominator there? I don't think so. It's not a common denominator. It's different for people when there is this moment of do I fit, and some people will have that. So sometimes it's the external forces that could be for a head. So changes around in a company that will push that question up for a lot of people.
Okay.
Am I still in the right? So when people are invited to apply for their own positions again. So sometimes organizations do that as a part of their change management, or they reorganize and restructure, and people go like, oh, well, now did my responsibility, did this really change now or not? And is this still what I want? So there's the two things. So change is an external invitation or push towards this personal question. And possible friction. But some people are like, oh, change is happening, good. And there's the 10% that will embrace any change. They say, good, we change, good. Whatever we do, we jump into the sea, fine. Let's and there's 10%. There's usually the normal Gauss curve there says there's also 10% that is usually saying, change, no. And they will cling to their chairs and say, we don't like this. And there is this in-between group, and depending on how much impact the change has, the more forceful the invitation is or the push.
Interesting. Yeah. And what would you advise to the people that, do not deal as well with change as, let's say, the 10% you talked about?
Talk with others. Start to say, and don't have only the internal conversation.
Yeah.
So because what I see often is that people have this question and then they sort of spiral into their own mind or heart and they get stuck. And they go like, and I don't know whom to talk to. And I don't know, is he going to stay? Is she going to stay? And then and they make it dependable on others. And when they start opening up, sometimes people are really afraid to even mention it to their leadership. So say, if I'm thinking about leaving, should I share that or not? Or I got this real nice offer, should I mention it? And I'm usually one of the people that tells them, yes, open it up, open up the conversation, because it doesn't help. And even your manager, they might say, oh no, or they might say, yes, please go. But then, that's another, then you have it on the table, and you have it, and you can discuss it.
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you don't have to worry. There's no assuming, making the ass out of you and me. So there's not this I think that you think that I think that. That's not helping.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're almost there, with implantations. Okay, what can you think? But that'd
be easy. That would make everything a lot easier.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, though.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun, Marika, to learn from your way of working, as well as kind of the stories and what you've seen.
Yeah.
Is there any last thought that you wanted to share before we
take another
round off?
hour? Yeah. Well, it was interesting when you said are there things where you really surprise people with your thoughts because they are contradicting or whatnot, and it's very often I say something on beliefs, and then I thought of this quote that I used somewhere. When God created men, she was only joking. So some people think like, what is she saying now? Is that might be, is that is still all right to say? But I think it turns perspective. It's like, what was there first? Were there goddesses first or gods? And what do you think then? What does it do to your values when you hear someone say that? And that's what I like when people, the Dutch word is omdenken. When they use this way of reversing or turning things around and looking from a different perspective. I wish that for everybody.
Yeah. I noticed that, like in your language, one of the first interactions we had, you mentioned something, and I was like, that's interesting, and that's different.
Thank you.
And I always remember that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was a lot of fun, and I'm going to round it off. If you're interested in Monica, her socials will be in the description below. Check her out. Let her know you came from our show. And with that being said, thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next one.